Is that a sufficient chatty stick for you?
No, needs more stick.
Oh, okay, needs more stick. Got it.
Hello?
Hello.
Alright.
I hit with the chatty stick. Okay, just in case you didn't know, Manaki.
Yeah, I'm not sure I know what that means.
Neither do I, but Griffin said it, and I'm deciding to roll with it.
My brain is along the lines of hit me with your rhythm stick. Hit me. Hit me. So,
That's
What would
pretty
that be?
awkward. I don't know how to treat that.
I should go visit the doctor then.
Not now, right? We're busy right now.
Hmm.
Right. So, yeah, how do you want to do this?
I guess, sometime like, I don't know exactly what the specifics are going to be during our session on Friday, but I don't know. I imagine that we might end up being outside of the city at a campfire one time or another. Well, everyone else is resting because we kind of need to do that since everyone else is still trying to recover from the quasit poison.
Yeah, that seems likely. I could work that in. It's no problem.
Okay. So who approaches? Do I approach you? No, it would make sense for you to approach me.
Yeah, I was actually
Yeah,
going with that.
Vognar heard a little bit about this, just a few words, but didn't really get any elaboration.
Um, so I guess maybe you like have like a little campfire going while everyone else is asleep and the giant eagle is doing whatever giant eagles do in their spare time.
Just flying around or sleeping. They
Oh,
sleep too.
is he? Oh yeah, no. And let's see, Wagner. In that case, he'll not being in armor or anything because that totally worked out for him. Whenever he was at the restaurant, not being in armor. Yeah, he would end up coming up and saying something along the lines of, "Ah, Durdle, it's good to see you up this evening. You look more capable than last night for sure. Our actions today proved as much. Regained full functionality of your limbs yet?"
Durdle sits and flexes and goes, "No, I still feel a bit stiff. I've been trying to carve this thing," and Durdle like lifts up a little this really awkwardly designed human that he's been sitting trying to chisel away a bit of wood at. This is horrible, isn't it?
Well, even on your worst day, you're still far more spry than I
Durdle smiles and he just tosses away the thing and says, "What can I do for you?"
and Vognar will end up settling down by Durdle. I was hoping to speak with you alone tonight, before I begin my studies. I've been in your group for only a few days, yet I have learned much in such a short time. One thing I have not learned about, though, is you. Care to share the story of how a curious dwarf like yourself got swept up into the arms of two quirky humans and a greenskin wielding a world-shattering axe?
Well, this is going to be an interesting story. Well, do you want me to start off where how I got involved with this group? The actual moment where I noticed this is going to be a bit of a hectic situation.
You can do that, or you can begin with a bit of your background.
Fair
Whatever you would
enough.
prefer.
Well, as you know, the name's Durdle. If you didn't know already,
Fancy
I
that.
was. I came from a family from the Dwarven Kingdoms. Not the capital, no worries. But I was sold into an apprenticeship with a trader. Quite a young age. I can actually very vaguely remember my family. I remember doing some nefarious deeds, which I'm, looking back at now, I'm not too proud of.
Your
Uh,
parents sold you?
yeah, well, it's tradition. It was cultural for the family to sell off one of the.
Um, yeah, Wagner knows that in the past, like in the old empire of dwarvenkind, there was slavery as a common practice because there simply weren't enough dwarves to get all the work done that was necessary. Now, this is sort of a settled thing. They no longer really utilize it, but some still instead of exactly sending your children to learn, the craftsman pays a sum of money to get the child, and then it's pretty much his property until the child has sort of worked off the debt. It is a way to get for dwarven families to get rid of if they have too many children or simply unruly ones.
But that would explain Vognar's surprise if the practice is not really followed in the Dwarven Kingdoms anymore, then, right?
Right. We're just trying to inform you.
Okay, thank you.
Continue.
Yeah, well, maybe surprising to you, but, you know, it's a bit of a pish for me. So I got sold to this trader, and, you know, the Dwarven Empire wasn't, you know, looking back, I'm able to see this in a bit of a better light. It wasn't doing that well. It was really high taxes. People were struggling. There's a lot of, you know, people really struggling to get a livelihood. So he decided that he wanted to go into the more illegal side of things, such as smuggling.
The less dwarvenly aspects, huh?
Oh, it depends. You know, he got quite a portion of money from doing it. So you know, I wouldn't say less dwarvenly. But you know, he kept training me regardless of the situations, and I was able to pick up a few sneaky ways of acquiring the odd bit of coin. Durdle shrugs. And eventually I decided I wanted to do my own thing. And Durdle, like, you know, he starts like playing with a ring on one of his fingers. I decided to get away from it. I wanted to just, you know, I grabbed as much as I could and I ran.
Abandon your apprenticeship?
It was stigmatizing. He took all of my profits. I barely made anything. I made enough to barely feed myself, and I felt I had enough skills to make a living of my own. Ha! Oh, that was something, you know. As soon as I was out, spent a couple of days at a tavern with my newfound, you know, mild wealth that I was able to acquire, and would you know it, I got knocked down by the king's shilling. You know, the old trick. You know, he lifts up a makeshift mug, and he says, you know, the one where there's a coin at the bottom of the mug, and if you see it, you're drafted. Yeah, I fell for that one.
And that was after you had fully discovered your newfound freedom, huh?
Yeah, freedom. So I was taken in to the military, the human military, actually, and they realized, you know, I wasn't made for fighting. I'm not a fighter. I can't hit for shite. But you know, I've got a fair mind around me. I can talk my way out of situations, and you know, I'm able to figure out. So they figured me as more of an information officer. You know, I was able to relay. I was able to, well, basically spy on the enemy to figure out what was going on. I served my time. You know, I amassed a bit more in wages and insurance policies. I set up shop. I set up a nice store, just selling wares and finding, an actual healthy way of living, not too illegal, you know, apart from avoiding taxes. But that's details, semantics.
How far had you traveled from the Dwarven Kingdoms at that point?
How far is the Dwarven Kingdoms from the starting island?
I actually have. If we have a way to look at the map, I can show you. Because the cities you travel to are already marked on it.
No. Can the map be
you
uploaded
have.
anywhere?
I could just send it to you, really.
Okay.
Drop it in the.
God forbid the last time we've tried Skype sending.
5 hours.
Let's see here. Pictures, maps.
I would definitely like to take a look at it on my own.
I think this one will be it. With the one we're currently using.
Alright, with all the cheats of the undead hideouts and the ogre magi not revealed yet.
Right. I have a couple of versions.
This is why iPope has to download a new map every single time, but we did nothing, nothing's changed. No, it's a new map.
No, well, yeah, no, I always almost do things. Even if they aren't changed, you can't see.
Just to say, there's one place on it where we've not been is Mull. Or is that where we're currently at?
No, we're at Seolon. I think that's the port city, right?
Yeah, you're in Ceylon.
So we figured out where Mull is.
Right, this is just sort of where you're going right now. You can see that Dan's Tall Tower is also on the map. That's the Gnomish capital.
Okay, so Zaradorn was... So
You sort of started in probably one of the smaller cities in the Dwarven Kingdom.
And Anifchar, that's the capital of the Dwarven Kingdoms?
That's the capital. Yeah.
Okay.
But then you actually traveled with this merchant all the way to Chicathamore.
Oh, fuck.
First to Rune, traveling around Rune, making good money. To Chicathamore, where you sort of... you can decide if you actually travel with the merchant there, or if you fled the way there, getting away from him. But at least you ended up in Kralos, where you were in this tavern, basically getting drafted to the Chicathamore Morian military.
I'll say I broke free in Rune, got a boat across to Kralos, and then I was drafted pretty much as soon as I left the boat, went into a tavern. So that'll be that.
That makes sense. They were under pretty much preparing to face the undead army, so they were drafting at this time, which is why it's a good place.
And
Then you basically, as a merchant, probably traveled back to Rune, probably avoiding where you thought your master might be, and ended up in Un Islands.
at the Spring Fair.
Right.
Okay.
And, continue.
How far I've travelled? Jesus, I've probably travelled more than half the world. You know, I started in the Dwarven Kingdoms, not the capital. It was a town just off of it. Not even a town, probably more of a village. I went up to Rune, which is where I escaped, you know, the tyranny of my master. Took a ferry over to Cracklefamore, and yeah, that's where I was drafted. Spent my tour of duty, and eventually amassed the wages and the money, and went to the Un Isles, just north of the Dwarven Kingdoms, where I set up shop. I apologise, my throat is really, really bad today.
Vognar understands. You're still recovering from Quasit poison.
Yeah. So I'm coughing every other word. I really apologise for that. So I set up shop at, you know, the Spring Fair. I figured there was going to be a good bit of coin flying around. And while I was trading, I really struggled to remember. One day, just with my wares, next moment, I'm underneath a whole bundle of what used to be my store and goblin corpses. And that's where I met the hearty adventurers that you know here. You know, Durdle tries to make this sort of epic look, fails, and just shrugs back down.
Goblin corpses! What a fantastic way to start your day.
I was very grumpy. I was actually more worried because I couldn't find my money. I had no money. All of it gone.
Obviously a major concern. What, did you ever figure out what became of it?
I had some ideas of what happened to it, but I found some goblins, but as you know, goblins breed like wild hares. There's far too many to hunt them all down.
Of course.
So, unfortunately, that wealth was unaccounted for. But, you know, as I said, I found some goblin parties, and with the help of the fellow adventurers you see here, you know, Dulbor, Tenrajima, Uzmok, they were all there. They're the ones that first got me up, and, well, I kind of initially became their de facto leader right from the start. I pretty much told them, we need to do this, we need to do that, and they followed.
So how long have you been with them?
Manaki, what scale would that be, about months now?
Yeah, about.
I say months.
2 months.
You know, I told you how long Dullboard has had that axe for,
Yes.
which was several months. I'd only known him a few weeks before that.
Really?
Barely a couple of weeks. At first, I imagine the best way to describe this as our first adventure was some zombified remains.
Zombified?
Yes, of a druid. Which we killed.
Understandably enough.
This elven, fishy-washy, druid stuff looking after the land. Disgusting stuff. But we really, we went back to the town to celebrate our victory, and the town drafted us as heroes of the realm. Durdle makes like a sort of a gesture with his hand to impinge at his royalty. They basically said we have to recruit a massive army to help fight off the potential undead enemy that will be coming to destroy the world. Now, at the time,
Did you not say that whenever you were drafted into the army at Kralos, that what you ended up fighting was undead creatures?
we did fight undead, and I've heard rumors that there is undead. They pop up time and time again, but the undead that this city was trying to plead us to was a case of it will be strong enough to take over the world, not strong enough to take over just one or two cities on the realm, the world. A form of a genocide of the entire populace is the grand.
Sort of what Dullboard is doing now.
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much. And moving on, I'll actually get to talking about that axe and how we found it. So we succeeded. We were, drafted, and we were tasked with getting this, army. And I didn't really bother that much. I just wanted to find a way to make my money, let other people deal with this. And such a naive way to think at the time, but I'm telling you it now. Durdle rubs his face and seems to be a bit upset with how his actions were.
There's no way you or anyone else could have known. Well, except Tenrujima had she bothered to. That's neither here nor there.
Of course. So we left the Un Isles to go back to Rune, where I initially did my apprenticeship all those years ago. And we ported in Zaradorn, the city.
Homecoming, yes?
Quite, yeah. The merchant city Zaradorn, famous for those giant eagles and eagle knights and what have you. They had a problem with some goblins. So we went, alright, let's go fix that. What better way to get in on their good side without killing a few goblins? I was still upset at them, so that would seem the best choice of options to do. So we headed out, and we purged the tower, one of the horn towers where they use them to warn incoming vessels that it's actually land, it's not ocean you're running towards. Yeah, the big horn towers. Oh. So we...
Nodding along.
We purged the tower, but that is where we found the axe. It was actually a very, very big troll was wielding it. And yeah, that was quite a problem. He actually seemed quite smart for a troll. Yeah, not your usual me take big stick, smash, smash. No, he seemed a lot smarter. He was actually able to articulate his words, and yeah, he was as strong as a troll, but he had the axe.
Kind of like how Dullboard now seems smarter than the average greenskin.
Indeed. Which is worrying in and of itself. We should have realized that this was a problem from the start. It seemed to have a taste for humans. You've probably seen this in your brief time with them.
I've heard mention of rumors before I came across all of you of someone and a massive group of guards. Not to mention, I saw Dullboard's display against that ogre.
Yes. I'll get to you about those guards in a moment. I'll hurry through this. So that is how we found his axe. We purged the city of undead, which were swarming in the undergrowth, and we succeeded. And that is where we got to the pledged allegiance of the Eagle Knights, and that's where we got this guy. Durdle points up to the eagle soaring above him.
Pledge of allegiance from the Eagle Knights. What does that mean?
It means they'll join us. There'll be a faction in the army that against the undead.
So where are they right now?
They are Currently, I believe, in Zaradorn, awaiting our call of duty. We're awaiting our call of arms to spring forth to the Unisles to prepare for the stand.
Uh, is that where the stand is going to be held, the Un Islands?
Durdle shrugs. It's like, I was a merchant turned fighter turned adventuring hero. I'm really over my depth thinking of these grand ideas, and it's something that keeps me up. It's why
Wherever the undead want to hold the final battle, that's where it's going to be.
pretty much, I would assume. We might fight it at the gates of hell itself. We might fight it at the gates of Mordor. Not Mordor, but you know what I mean. Yeah, so we might
Never heard of that place.
We might fight it at the gates of Aneth Char, of Tharkal, like Zarkar.
Above the shadow of Mount Doom.
So as we got their allegiance, we headed to Aneth Char, the capital of the dwarves. I'm sure you've heard of it.
Vognar's eyes light up. I have not been home in many years, and I have it on good word, your own companions, even Dolbort himself, that you four were in the area at the time. What happened?
I believe I've made mention to you before that your homeland has changed far more. How long has it been since you've last been there?
Vognar's eyes widened a bit as he's doing calculating. I would go so far as to say that the last time I saw home was before you were born.
Durdle nods.
Um,
I don't know
Sorry.
exactly, Manaki.
Sorry to interject here, but that would be at a time where it was relatively stable. There was a good king,
Okay.
a very traditional sort of dwarven emperor, just going along the lines of keeping to themselves, working on the economy, getting work for people. It was a good tidings. Things were going the right way.
That's great then. In that case, if it's been like 40 years, then Vognar, whenever he left it and, he wanted to move away from the tradition and go pursue his own wanderlust, he was used to the Dwarven kingdoms being stable and powerful and what have you, so this whole talk of uprising, whenever he jokingly passed it off as a civil uprising when he first heard of it, it was really just a lighthearted jest. He was rather confused, which is why he's interested in learning more.
Right.
So, what family do you come from? Is you noble-born? Were you a common family?
It comes as no surprise that you have not heard of my family. This point, Vognar he reaches into his clothes, and from a special pouch, he pulls out an object, a large, round, black pearl. He reflexively closes his fist over it, and then he leans over towards Durdle. In all my years since my departure from home, never have I found a greater treasure than the one my sister gave me. He then offers it towards Durdle, an opportunity to see himself. I never show it to anyone. I certainly never display it, and it's even quite undwarvenly to have such an impractical object. That's why she found it for me. She alone knew of my wanderlust, of my intent to leave home, and she wanted a part of her, a part of Clan Grimbeard's heritage, to be with me always. And he does offer it for Durdle to take, and if Durdle does take it and even looks at it, examines it, he can see etched onto the pearl, unique and distinctive sight. It's the emblem and symbol of Clan Grimbeard. It's a blood-stained warhammer struck into a field of grass half first, upon which a raven is perched, and a powerful storm highlighted by a lightning bolt is raging in the background of that.
Turtle recognizes the symbol from some of the silverware he acquired in the Dwarven kingdoms.
Durdle looks at it. He doesn't take it from your hands. He has respect. He doesn't want to defile, such an artifact of yourself by touching it. So he just looks at it and admires it while it's in your hand and goes, I may have some bad news for you.
Vognar stares intently at Durdle. You asked the heritage of my clan. Clan Grimbeard is a noble and powerful aspect of the Dwarven kingdoms, our history stretching back thousands of years. Among our family members were those who helped raise the strongholds you can find here, dotted along the scar. We are protectors and servants of our people. Always.
You know, in the past, the halflings were used as slaves, the halflings and gnomes, to fill out the labour and to fill the gaps of all the menial tasks that dwarves felt too proud to achieve.
Of course.
And then they went free.
They what?
They rebelled and decided they wanted rights, they wanted to be treated as equals. This didn't happen once, it happened twice.
And I had never heard of it?
The halflings and gnomes are now treated as equals. They're not slaves anymore. They are free to do as they wish.
Just for Grimith, yeah, you know about the slavery rebellions.
Okay, I didn't know how long ago they had transpired.
Well, they're a couple hundred years ago.
Okay,
so
okay.
Those are good times.
I thought they were like more recent things that he might not have. Okay.
No. So yeah, so you've heard of the gnome and halfling rebellions where they usurped our ancestors into claiming their own rights. They refused to be slaves.
Vognar nods, understandably so. Yes.
This happened a second time. Not with halflings or gnomes, though.
With
dwarves.
You don't have any with fellow dwarves?
When we got into the city was split and splintered into 3 major factions from what we could tell. The false emperor, well, I say false, he was ignorant, stupid, and arrogant. The noble families, who were powerful and wished to return to the golden age of the Dwarven Empire, returning to the good old times of where we held the halflings and gnomes in slavery.
Fittingly idealistic for some of the noble families, yes.
And then we had probably the most numerous of all factions were the common folk, who wished to maintain a somewhat socialist ideology, forming things such as unions and looking for betterments of the common dwarf.
Just to interject here again, Vognar doesn't really probably know what socialist means. This is if he's heard it as sort of a weird idea from the gnomish lands. There are all these philosophers and weird talkers who talk a lot but don't really do much. And this it seems like a very, very, very weird concept.
It does seem like undwarvenly in its aspect, which is why Vognar is going like, whoa. Could you explain that one for me, Durdle?
You know, I'm trying to think of a good way to explain this. This is quite an interesting idea. Some humans have felt that, as I've been around humans for quite some time, some humans have felt that slavery is a horrible thing, but having an aristocratic country or nation is sometimes seen as worse, where some people are felt that where they have the most power, something about a 99% 1%, or 99% of the people will share a single percent of the wealth. A lot of people feel this was unjust. We're exploiting the lesser and more common man for the betterment of a minority. The socialists felt that it should be equal across the board. No single person should be...
What?
Durdle bows his head slightly, but doesn't give a hint that, this is wrong or anything. He just continues. So the socialists felt that this should be equal. The wealth should be spread across all dwarves, not just a handful. Not just the noble families or specific strong influence families. They would be treated just as equal as the dwarf that would mine iron for his family.
How did the 4 of you play a part in this?
Durdle sighs, and he says, well, our impact on this was difficult. As we entered the city, we were assaulted by fishmen. You know, the fish that look have legs, the old spears and stuff.
Vognar knew that a Sahagwin, was that like a common thread, like in the Dwarven kingdoms, Manaki?
They are known to sort of stay in the southern parts of the Dwarven kingdoms, but they haven't never really been a huge concern. It is known that they have lived in lands where they've been pretty much free to populate. They've lived in these coral reefs in this southern sea, and no one has really interacted with them in a long time.
This Vognar frowns, but then again, it has been quite a long time since he has been home, so apparently, this is just gonna be part one to many shockwaves.
Well, they formed another faction.
How did these fish creatures form a faction of the Dwarven kingdoms?
They wanted to kill and exterminate the dwarves and take over the lands for their people.
Of course they did.
By mass murder. And they were led by a dwarf.
What?
Durdle nods. A dwarf sympathized with them and felt that they had more right than his comrades. So
not only are you telling me that fellow dwarfsmen thought to completely abolish the noble class and distribute wealth and power equally amongst everyone without care for tradition, but that at least one dwarf took the side of murderous fish people who sought to slay all dwarves.
I think you nailed that pretty much on the head, yeah.
Vognar's bewildered.
My party, initially, having ourselves dealt, being attacked by these fishmen, we felt a bit vengeful. So, we rested in the Dwarven kingdoms thinking of ways to figure out why they attacked us. We found out from the factions, and I tell you why, because each of them wanted us to eliminate the Lizardmen and back each individual group.
So
the
you
Emperor
four were going to be used as pawns to complete each other's objectives.
Yes. That sums it up quite well. We were seen more as, a tool to get the job done. A kind of a way to sway the argument toward one faction more. These factions weren't the entire populace. They were more parties wishing for an aim. Very loud minorities in each. Of course, the Emperor being the most famous of them all, being the head figure of the Dwarven kingdoms, but the noble being the more popular option, because, these are the people that run the stores, they run the money. That's where the wealth is.
So I'm not understanding it, and Vognar's going to be a bit leading here. It's like, you four have been standing before me for the past few days, and yet as you're telling me this, and of the unrest and revolt that was brought down, how did you all fail to uphold and preserve the Dwarven kingdoms?
It was too much. The Dwarven Kingdom, there was too much corruption. They couldn't live with each other. An aggressive leader took over the socialist group. He wanted blood. The noblemen wanted blood. The Emperor wanted blood. They wanted all Dwarven blood. With this, Durdle gets more and more irritated and really saddened by this. He's very noticeably quite distraught by this, and he's rubbing his face and his hands in his face, and he's just like, Neither part, they all wanted to have control. They all wanted their party to have ultimate control over where Dwarven destiny will be. The nobles wanted the old republic back. The Emperor wanted the status quo. The socialists wanted reform. And it led to the Civil War.
That's it?
No. The Lizardmen, we dealt with them. Us four.
The Lizardmen, what did you do involving that?
Durdle smiles. We killed the leading dwarf. We killed the fucking traitor. We chopped his head off and brought it back to the city.
Vognar nods with this one. At least that one makes sense. Okay.
We chopped his head off and we explored the city. We explored, actually not the city, we explored a cave where the dwarf was living. And it emerged us to the dam just north of Anishchar, you know, the one that powers the city, powers the wheels and provides us the water, the sustenance of the city. And they were planning to break it down, to flood the city with Sahagin. We were able to stop them, and that's where we met a dragon.
What?
Within the waters of the dam was a dragon. A very big dragon. We didn't get to kill it. It nearly killed us, but we dealt with the entire situation. The dragon flew away. I do not know where.
Vognar is even more confused. Wait. How did you do with the dragon?
Yeah, Durdle leans back and thinks. Remember that axe? It's hard for you to not remember the axe.
Yeah?
Dullboard was somehow able to convince the dragon that he was its master. And the dragon acknowledged it.
Vognar frowns, and he too leans back at... Was the dragon alive?
It was. Then it wasn't.
What?
I forgot to mention, at the start of the adventure, Dullboard acquired 2 potions. 2 very black and evil potions. How do I know they were evil? Well, let me tell you. He used one on his dog.
Dullboard had a dog?
Not for very long, but yes, he had a dog. He fed it this potion, and it turned the dog undead.
Oh,
Then
no.
he killed it.
Oh, no. Don't say what you're about to say, Durdle.
Dullboard threw the potion down the dragon's throat.
No.
Durdle nods.
With the hand that's not clutching the pearl, Vognar lowers his head down to it.
You see why we want to sort that axe out, don't you?
I don't understand how any of you are still with him.
Do you really think that he would just simply accept the fact that we disappear? Oh, he would just come chasing. And to be fair, I do not want that thing chasing after me.
And this Vognar points at the giant eagle, like, how could he chase you if you're on that? I know, as unseemly as it may be for a dwarf to leave the ground. We did it whenever we left the quarantine.
Well, that's true. But, do you really think it would be wise to leave someone that's corrupted alone?
No. Not now.
Durdle just opens his arms and goes, well, that's why.
So...
And with this, Durdle raises his hand and says, Vognar, I don't think your family exists anymore.
Vognar leans back forward and he turns the pearl so that the symbol is showing. And as the light dims within his eyes, his glance gets accusatory. Have you seen this before today? The clan emblem, Durdle.
And I'm going to assume for this part that Vognar, this one's from Manaki, that Vognar was the lead family that were the noble faction.
Not exactly the lead one, but one of the prominent ones.
They were hosting the meetings.
Right.
Durdle sits and goes several times, in fact. That noble faction I told you about, they hosted many of the meetings, they attended the meetings. They often said things during the meetings on what they would like and what they would want to impose, hence why I'm able to tell you what they wanted. And I fear they will not be able to get them.
So, these, what did you call them, socialists, succeeded after your dragon fight? How did this whirlwind of multiple factions and almost seemingly gnomish beliefs reach this conclusion?
Durdle just leans back for a bit and he thinks. And he's able to see what's going ahead. He knows probably what the outcome's going to be, but he takes a breath and asks, how much of your family was living in Anethchar?
Well, let's see. I'm going to talk out of character here for a bit. So yeah, Vognar only had one sibling at the time, his younger sister, Ariel, who actually found the pearl for him and etched the clan emblem. There was definitely his parents and a huge extended, family comprising the entire clan, because they stretched their history back for so long. I mean, I'm just thinking now here of Manaki here. Dozens? I'd say at least.
At least. I mean, it really depends on what was family. What was the Grimbeards? I mean, this was sort of their main seat, which would suggest they were involved in mining or some metal production.
Right. With the hammer there, then yeah, at least dozens in the Dwarven capital, and perhaps hundreds spread out over the Dwarven kingdom itself. Then.
Right.
And which case, Vognar says, scores.
Durdle nods. He's sitting thinking. He's trying to think how he comes out. How do you feel? I get the feeling that you wish to maintain these noble ideas. None that they are wrong, but you wish to see the Dwarven Empire be restored to the might it once was.
I would like to see that. Well, from what you've said of the nobles, I don't quite agree with all of their sayings. I would have preferred the Emperor to maintain his seat. After all, whenever I left home, the Dwarven kingdoms, while not as strong as they had been in times past, were strong and vibrant, and the Emperor was good and powerful. And while I understand the halflings and gnomes breaking free from slavery, I understand that there was no slavery. Dwarves were treated as dwarves. We're part of the same race, committed to the same goals and ideas. And while I may not agree specifically with all that's been said, I do care about my family as every good dwarf should. What became of it?
Durdle, it's very obvious Durdle's not pushing the issue, but he starts to talk in. The Emperor was corrupt. He just wanted to make sure that everyone thought he was good. He would do things to benefit him, but destroy the Empire. He would gladly sell his aunt to improve what people thought of him, even if it would destroy swathes of land. He would erect statues of platinum purely to stroke his ego.
I guess, the Manaki. Has there been, an historical analysis of, emperors of the Dwarven kingdoms being corrupt?
It is not a usual thing. The emperors have always sort of been the high. It's been the same family for very, very long. This family is one that arose to sort of still and ensure that basically when the Dwarven Empire sort of fell, there was chaos everywhere. But this family of nobles were able to restabilize the Dwarven kingdoms, the homelands of the dwarves, and sort of make sure that they didn't fall into the same disarray as the rest of the empire. And they have been ruling ever since. Of course, this is a little out of character, I guess mine always, but your characters probably don't know this, but the emperor that ruled while Durdle was here. He's not the same one that ruled when Vognar was there. They were in the same family, but the one when Durdle was there were the young cousin of the ruler that were when Vognar was there. And he was actually a dwarf who had lived outside of the dwarven kingdoms for the most of his life, and in that taking up some quite, to dwarves, horrible fashion senses, such as dyeing his beard that had the emperor's beard has always been black. Now for 300 years he dyed it, bleached it, white and sort of blonde. And this he completely whacked out on tradition, hiring orcish mercenary guards as his personal guard, disbanding the noble, sort of ancient guardsmen, because he thought that, well, the nobles may have a little too much power for his liking. He would like to have more control himself. But there's been no history of general. The emperors have always been honorable and dutiful and good.
With
In that case,
Durdle,
Vognar is going to go with that, and he's going to be disbelieving, like, no, the emperors have always stood, they protected and kept the Dwarven Kingdom safe whenever collapse was imminent. The fact that no.
Durdle, just doesn't even look as if he's gonna try. He at least looks at Vognar and thinks, would Durdle be able to tell that that an emperor's beard should not be white?
Yeah, old dwarf. I mean, Durdle saw this man wearing, I believe it was like a yellow sort of silky bathrobe, with his bleached beard and almost earrings, of nice glittering stones. This was not the emperor that has always been seen, also through Durdle's childhood, as a sort of a stone statue standing there every season, just staying strong and steadfast. And yeah, you could clearly tell that this guy was a sort of a
sort of a
illustrious.
difference. Yeah.
Very, very different.
Durdle thinks and goes, you seem to know your history. You know every family does have a sickly branch, a runt of the litter, so to be.
Right.
I'm sorry to say that this emperor was probably that very branch. Some poor, mismanaged, spoiled thing. He bleached his beard white, he wore yellow robes, he wore things to influence himself. He wore all this incredible jewelry, this illustrious figure, not the stone, steadfast, stoic hero of my childhood.
At this point, Vognar's still clearly disbelieving. His eyes are going to be searching, and it's partly accusatory, partly also hoping that he can detect that Durdle is lying. He doesn't have an answer for that so much as the idea that a dwarf would present himself in such a manner is, especially the Emperor of all people, he can't fathom that.
Durdle, thinks for a bit and he says, you can tell Durdle is actually struggling to think at the moment. You can tell he's trying to find a way to phrase what he's going to try and put across. The Emperor brought destabilization to the Dwarven kingdoms. You may remember them as being this incredibly strong and firm nation. In my childhood, I remember the same, for how short it was. That fear of change or the unknown was not even thought of. As a dwarf, you understood that, with strong foundations come a strong future. And it's, why we love stone so much. It does not change. It stays and it will remain. Without a strong leader, things can fall apart. People become pretenders to the throne, as is what happened with the noble families. They became power mad. They saw the failings of the emperor and wished to take control. They wanted to guide the dwarven civilizations to a whole new beginning, to a bright old future. Durdle, stares up at the eagle flying up ahead. But at the cost of the common dwarf. They had no value of the merchants. They had no value of the common man. Why would they get their hand dirty doing labor? Force them to do it. They saw no worth in the common man. They just wanted to find power to benefit themselves. Although a noble ideology, I disagreed with it. You do not put your beliefs ahead of your fellow dwarves.
So this was coming to what Vognar was thinking to begin with, and so he'll say it slowly and gravelly, such as the stone that we came from. So you sided with the socialists?
Durdle just looks at Vognar. Doesn't say anything, just looks.
It is no wonder that the Dwarven kingdoms came to such a division if, as you say, the Emperor became so undwarvenly. It is no wonder, then, that the noble families, as estranged and as differing as they could be in their opinions, managed to unite in the hopes of overthrowing the Emperor and returning to a golden age of dwarfism where our empire stretched far and wide across the lesser races. And at this, perhaps
Durdle
Vognar
cringes slightly.
He expresses a bit of, I guess you could say, his innate racism with that. What was the condition of these so-called kingdoms upon your departure? Have the socialists united? Do you know anything more?
We left as the rebellion begun.
And no one knows anything more, Vognar says lowly.
I've asked, in case there has been traders that have followed our path, but I have heard nothing. If anything, they are surprised to hear it. And
Vognar is going to. Dwarves tend to be pretty good at not showing their emotion, except around close people. But he is going to stand up with a flourish of emotion. He's going to look down. His primary thoughts here are concern for his family first and foremost. Not that, he's seen them in decades, but he still wishes he honors his ancestors and he carries them around with him. And so to hear this, in the idea of standing for the Dwarven people, you aided the elements that'll bring down the entire race. What if this supposed undead, massive, looming, overwhelming threat is ending up sweeping towards us or what have you to fight us at these islands, as you've heard? How will the dwarves stand against this? With their economy, their army, what did you gain out of this, Durdle Hulinforge?
Durdle doesn't look threatened, he doesn't look apologetic, he just looks up. The dwarves in the past, the old times, they were prosperous, they were rich, and they were powerful. Why did it not keep going? What made it fall down? It will happen again.
What did you get for aiding these socialists?
You mean material wealth?
What did you
reward?
get? I presume you did it for some purpose, else why would you have done it in the first place? All of you. Not just you, Durdle, but everyone else in your group.
We got no reward from it. We had no extra gold, no magical items of ultimate prosperity. We got no clothes, no artifacts. We got nothing to show for what we were there with. All we left with was some bone armor that we took from the traitorous dwarf and his weapon.
So all of you, even the non-dwarves, which is understandable because they're not dwarves, but all of you together, you united under... You did all of this for... an
The betterment
idea?
of dwarves.
Vognar is going to put his pearl back within the pouch that he keeps within his clothes. And he is going to, I guess, cast down his eyes again at Durdle. He's, within just a span of a few days, everything has completely gone south for this dwarf. The axe decapitating a halfling, all these sorts of affairs, the trials and tribulations he's gone through. Nearly getting mobbed to death by halflings, and the fact that he has learned that his entire homeland has been completely detonated, and he has no idea what has become of his family, particularly his sister, has, his veins are actually starting to bulge, as, it's unfathomable that the Emperor fell apart, he died himself, became so undwarvenly, just... Everything has sort of corroded in Vognar's brain. He just assumed that the Dwarven kingdoms would remain as they were. Perfectly fine while he was out in the world.
Vognar, sit down and take some deep breaths. Obviously this is going to be a lot for you to digest right now.
I have no interest in sitting next to a traitor to our own race.
Durdle just looks up and goes, what would you have done? Would you have maintained a conservative belief to bring back this dwarven might, which would eventually have repeated history?
Could you so weakly assume that dwarves would have folded at the merest puff of wind? Have you no shame for your lack of disregard for our blood?
Wow. Sorry, out of character there.
It's understandable, yeah.
Take your time.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what Durdle's going to try and express in this one. Because Durdle at the moment is... This is a very weird experience, but Durdle at the moment is trying his best to maintain himself. Because Durdle feels, although he done a wrong deed, he does feel that he's done the right choice. So I'm trying to think what best way to express that is.
It's worth noting, by the way, that although Vognar has, some racism towards the other species, in terms of, the hobo, not commoner classification, he's not judging Durdle based upon that. He still sees all the dwarves, perhaps idealistically, as united in one race, one blood. Everyone has their job and purpose, and we all do it for the furthering of dwarven kind.
Oh no, he gets that. Just Durdle's not being a native dwarf. He's
right, which is why Vognar is calling him out.
Because he is a foreigner to the lands. He's lived with other races, so he's not as racist. He has stereotypes for certain behaviors, like gnomes are very stiff on their money, and humans are very stupid. He has those kind of beliefs. But
perhaps it's telling that Vognar has been in these outside of the Dwarven lands for quite some time, and so he's had time to adjust himself, but to other races, and he can do these seemingly undwarven things. He's afflicted by wanderlust, yet still, given the situation he was born into, it's quite important for him, his heritage.
Oh no, I get that. You're portraying that really well. I'm just trying to think how Durdle's going to respond to it that fits his character.
If you have any lore questions, feel free to ask.
It's no problem. I'm just trying to think of a way to express it. It's no Lawrence.
Just the little thing I forgot to add. Sorry to interrupt again, but why it was so preposterous that the Emperor wore yellow is that because the dwarven nobility has always been especially known to wear purple.
All right. Well, Durdle wouldn't be able to pick that up. Really, I guess.
Durdle has said nothing of his brother either?
Actually, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Durdle,
If you
cleans up,
forgot.
and thank you for that one. You have family over there. You're not the only one that has family in there that could potentially be lost.
Supposedly, we still have family.
Exactly. My family could be suffering the very same fate of yours. My
Why
brothers,
did you let this
sisters.
happen if all of our race, not just family, but we all should be united within the same family? How could you let this happen?
Because I saw the nobles demanding to crush the common people, to grind them into dust that makes their bread, that greases their wheels, that greases their coin purses, not to better them, but to abuse and exploit them, to turn them into deprived, poverty-stricken individuals so they can lavish themselves in citadels of gold and platinum.
Vognar
I
shakes his head.
refused.
Every faction has its rogue elements, and the nobles were overreacting because of the sheer terror that Emperor you've described was causing. They would have tempered out and done what was best for the dwarven people.
Not from what we could tell. You said you haven't been there since before I was born. From what I cannot remember much from when I was but a child, from when I was a bairn, but I can tell you from what you tell me, it was different even then. And it was far different from when I was a child to just a couple months ago. Things had changed for far the worse. And it seemed to be, at the time, the choices were to support an emperor whose mind was purely to just stroke his own ego, to support a nobleman that would crush his own fellow dwarf for the betterment of money. Now, don't get me wrong, I praise money as any dwarf could, but why would you crush a fellow dwarf? Nay, your entire civilization, and still feel guilt-free about it. And then the common people, the people that hold the entire civilization firm, the bread of the civilization, the actual bricks and foundation, giving them the power to decide what happens. No one has done that before in Dwarven history. Yes, we've worked together as a civilization, but never before has it been given in full to the power of the people. I sacrificed my family for it, because I saw what could be better for Dwarven kind, not just the wallets and purses of a fair few. They wanted old times. I see the old times failed. They fell to what is now. What would happen? They would repeat themselves. I doubt they would learn from past mistakes.
You said you sacrificed your own family. What right did you have to sacrifice everyone else's families?
I was the straw that broke the horse's back. If it was not me, it would have been the next man to enter the town. I take that burden on, and I live with that burden every night. As a dwarf should take that choice. No orc, no human, a dwarf should take the responsibility of his own people. I was the straw.
Vognar is going to continue to stare down at Durdle. It's a continuing flash of emotions from disbelief to confusion, bewilderment, to outright anger and rage, as if he wants to almost he is placating himself and thinking of ways in why he should not leap on Durdle and throttle his neck right now. And he ends up coming to a low voice and says, "All of your companions would swear to this? What you've said?"
You can ask Tenrajima, you can ask Kuzmok, you can ask Dullboard. They were beside me when I sided with the Socialists. They can testify to what I said.
And then with a puff of emotion, Vognar loses his defiant stance, and he slumps back down. And for the first time, since he had never said this, he never believed it. He would dwell back on the family who left behind sometimes, and it would be bittersweet, but he would always feel and know that he made the right decision to leave, and that he would hope one day that he would make his ancestors proud. But for the first time, he says, I shouldn't have left.
You can... Durdle starts and stops himself. Regret is something that can chew away at a dwarf's spirit, can turn him against himself, and he can live a life of depression. You did what you felt was right at the time, like I did what I felt was right at that time. I regret that choice probably as much as you regret leaving. But for you, I am sure you felt it was the best choice at the time.
Vognar takes Durdle's words into account, as he has been this entire time, and with his own, what he feels to be self-defeat, his sudden overwhelming of, just like I guess, self-pity, just as his own regret hammer smashed into him, he takes a deep breath, and he thinks about why he started adventuring with the party, and why he's here, and what he resolved to do as soon as he discovered the properties of Dulbor's axe. And he manages much more slowly and less defiantly, almost as if he were broken, to stand back up and say, I will be free of this regret, and free to return to my own people once we have dealt with this. And it's like a final breath. His hand like waves around, obviously referring to Soulhaven, and he turns his back and walks back to his tent.
Durdle, watches him wander away and actually makes a statement. Vognar,
Stops.
you're a good dwarf. You've done many more. A lesser dwarf would have left much earlier. What makes you stay with us before I had this talk with you?
He turns around and it's rather unbefitting of a dwarf to be offering such cynical humor, but he has spent too much time with humans, and he lets out this grim smile and says, "Why, Durdle? Before I can save our homeland, we must first save the world."
Durdle laughs and goes, "Don't leave. Share a drink with me. Come on." And he pats the ground next to him.
Vognar clenches his fist, and he thinks about it. And slowly he trudges back to the campfire to sit down by Durdle for the night.
And I'm assuming for the night, Durdle is trying to sound a bit merry, having a couple of drinks and trying to talk of myths and heroes long past, and trying to get Vognar to talk about history and his...
Vognar can mention the rumors he's heard about the dwarven stronghold bastions secreted around the Scar that he's interested in visiting.
And then, Durdle would then share his stories about rumors of so-called orc artifacts hidden within some of these strongholds, and he names one in particular.
Which might interest Vognar.
So
I think that that goes ahead and takes care of everything that Vognar and Durdle have to say for the night.
All right.
Manaki, any thoughts or digestion of that?
I found it interesting. The amnesia music I was listening to fit really well with it. So I'm gonna be listening to that probably at
I
the
found that
continuation of the
I find that eerily relaxing. That very album.
yeah. It has this expectant feel. Like it's not really energetic. But,
And
yeah,
everything was coming to a head.
I really I enjoyed this maybe more than I should have. Just being able to enjoy the play and imagining the characters in this situation with all that's going on. Sort of this sudden realization that the Bastion at home isn't as strong as it was before. Actually, I'd like to read Griff's thoughts as this went on because I don't know how much you left out on purpose and how much you just have forgotten.
No, Durdle's. What Durdle was going through when he was thinking of it. He initially started off, he was just sharing the story, but then when he hit the Dwarven Kingdoms, he realized, oh, wait a minute. This is not gonna be good. And that's when Durdle started asking the questions. You know, not subtly, quite blatant things, but hoping that Wagner would just think of them as ways to express his nobility. That's what, Durdle was thinking. And asking things like, so what noble family are you from? How many of you live there? And what are your beliefs? And things like that.
Right.
And as Durdle started to explain things, Durdle realized he really did not want to potentially lose Wagner, because he sees Wagner as a very strong dwarf. And Durdle misses the fellow dwarves to talk to. He really does. And he didn't want to explicitly say straight out. He wanted to be a bit more diplomatic about how he said he sided with the socialists. So that's why he tried to explain his thoughts on the emperor, his thoughts on the nobles, and his thoughts on the common people as detailed as he did to kind of justify his choices. But every step he got closer, he got a bit more nervous because he realized he doesn't actually know Wagner at all. He doesn't know how he will react. The only thing that he knows is he can try to play off of Dwarven heritage.
Right.
And Dwarven history. And so as it progressed, he saw it. And at the end, he didn't want Ragnar to leave angry. That's where Durdle played the question of, why are you staying? And he's like, we must save the world. And Durdle's like, fine, you're coming over, let's have a drink. Just to try and clear the air slightly.
Right. I did see Wagner trying to make a dramatic sort of exit there, though. But in this way, Durdle managed to lessen the tension and probably keep a teamwork between the two dwarfs of the group. What do you think, Grimith?
I had from having the time to think about us having this chat together before the session. I knew that Vognar was going to ask about Durdle's background, and then steer it towards the Dwarven Kingdoms, because that was really interested Vognar the most. And as a player, I envisioned that ending with and how I hinted at it whenever I talked to you, Manaki, about Vognar getting angry, and just his relations. He's been a bit, I guess, friendly towards Durdle more than any of the other members, obviously, and they've been off gallivanting together, going to raid magic shit and what have you, and his personality changing a lot more because of that and being a lot more terse. But how this ultimately all played out, and Vognar, did portray that as, confused, bewildered, and accusatory, and angry, and especially there with that whole storm off at the end, that was going to encapsulate that. But Durdle did manage to call it back. Probably ended up salvaging a bit of the whole teamwork aspect, as you noted, Manaki. The light is still going to be dimmer in Vognar's eyes because he had never really worried about home until a few days ago, and he hadn't worried about his sister or his family. He might have left them and left behind the life that was designed for him, but he still loves his ancestors and he cherishes them and he cares a lot. And were it not for this whole feeling now that with his discovery of the axe that he feels almost burdened to save the world, as he noted to Durdle. Before he can save the Dwarven Kingdom, he must first save the world. Just to hold that until this situation is resolved to his satisfaction, he can't leave the party.
Right. And is that the situation with just the axe, or the whole situation with the undead?
For the time being, Vognar doesn't know enough about all of their single experiences, although Durdle tried to go through all the background. For the time being, he is tied specifically to that axe. Whenever you asked last week if Dullboard had cast down the axe, would Vognar have gone back? I said yeah. He would have left the party. He sees the axe as his burden, especially after feeling its effects firsthand after using it. After seeing what he's seen, he does not want such a thing to exist anymore. And
Right.
he will try, success or failure, to make sure that it doesn't.
Right. Do you have any questions about anything? Something you felt that maybe you'd like to know as just flavor about the world, or in any way something I can tell you that may make it easier to play your characters?
Vognar is our current our plot device for knowledge about the world at the moment.
But Dullboard is really the fulcrum here. He's been building up to it. I mean, we're kind of down here in the Scar, visiting the Orcish homelands. Part of how he's played his character, and part of the Axe's influences upon him, have just created this whole fulcrum upon which everything is going to be turning now. I mean, Ipope himself has said that he feels that his character and the Axe are inseparable, and Dullboard obviously feels the same way now, too. And with the rest of the party, at least Vognar and Durdle feeling more and more committed to dealing with the Axe in some fashion, it is going to create a lot of drama as we get into exploring the Scar.
Right. And as I'm sure you can see at the map, if you're still looking at it,
Yeah, I still am.
the Scar is quite a huge place. The top you won't really have to deal with right now, but if you look at the red spot, sort of the red desert in the middle of the woods and the Badlands, that would be one of the places in the world where you don't go. Because that is a place that is known for being evil. The dwarves never settled it. They went near it, but they never went into the actual desert. That place is so evil you can feel it, which of course, as Vognar would know, might have an effect on the surrounding lands. Not anything huge. This has never been a big problem as long as you just stayed away. The whole undead's rising and such may be possible to.
That whole southeastern area by Mool, that's all stuff that's dotted by mountains, or are those just hills?
What?
Down in the southeastern portion of the Scar. Are those by Mool, the M-U-H-L? Are those like mountains, or are those hills? Like the humps and stuff of the land?
Well, yeah, all the one down there, that's mountains.
Okay.
That is the mountains where the legends say that ogres.
That's what I was thinking, of course.
And the land south of that, you can see by all the cold ice and such. That is where some of the largest Orcish tribes live. The ones that were never subdued. The ones near the area of Mool on that side of the mountains were subdued by the Dwarven kingdoms, but they never were able to subdue the ones down there. They live in a tough land with nothing really to harvest or gain. No real infrastructure. Nomads traveling around there.
Right. So, I guess to refresh my brain and bring it back into focus, what was the party's original goal before Vognar interfered of heading here? Was it for Dullboard to have a homecoming? What other interest did the other party members have in coming here?
Unite the Orcish tribes for an army.
Ah.
The party had a meeting on the deck of the ship as they left the Dwarven Kingdoms where they wanted to go. Caven, their NPC, asked them, and they had quite a few different choices.
I remember that.
Being Chikathamor, Magador, Sakara, and the Outlands and the Gnomes, and of course the Orcish tribes. And they decided to go to the Orcish tribes. And that was, of course, my cue as to what part of the story I should initiate. Where they decided to go.
And they, where I ended up meeting them was before they left Frakai, whenever, Frakal.
Right. Right, that was, Thrakai. It was right when they left there.
Right. The arena and the guard slaughter and the pushing the drow into the fire.
Right. And of course, not all cities your characters would know of are marked in this map. It's just the sort of plot important
Right.
areas, because there simply isn't enough area on the map for me to write all the city names.
And so Seolan is the port city that's a rival area for trade coming in and out of this, I guess, rather jungle-y and uninhabited region.
It is not. It is not really jungle. It is too
Okay.
cold for that.
Okay.
It's more temperate forest. But yeah, this is mostly either desert or heavily forested areas. And yeah, there is quite a lot of trade with fur, especially.
Right, and of course we saw all the adventurers, you noted that, who just like to stream in and out of the port, but obviously due to the quarantine.
Right. This is sort of one of the bastions of civilization that are thriving in this area. Most trade is done by caravans traveling to other cities where they meet with the tribal people and then trade, traveling back to Ceylon and then sailing to Thrakai where they sell their wares, hoarding them in the huge warehouses until the people who ordered them come to get them.
And I know my character knows of dwarven strongholds, some once upon a time being in this region. Does he have any idea of where ruins of them would be located, like along the coast down here? Or does he not know any particulars regarding that?
There would be some along the coast, sort of south of the Thrakai, but that would be the old sort of port towns, port cities. But as this was a very hostile area, most of the fortresses inland are much more. Have a much larger chance to not have already been looted.
Right.
So the further inland, and actually the further towards the Orcish lands you travel, the more there will be left in these ruins. But of course, the more dangerous they become, because they've been more heavily fortified. For example, that Vognar would know that Ola Ikar is sort of a trading post, one of these where caravans would go to trade, laying right next to one of the old dwarven sort of what is it called? Like a place where you get food and water on a journey, like.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I don't know the word though.
Yeah, one of those outpost things.
And
Where
Olokar is further along the river? Or is that inland?
no, it's inland.
Okay.
And there's a way. Vognar would have heard to the Underway, the old Underway.
The old passages that the Dwarven kingdoms used.
Yeah, under well, pretty much all the world. And this would be a way to easily get through the heavily forested area if one did not wish to travel through it. But merchants don't go through that. They just go to Olaikar and allow the tribes of the forests to trade with them. But this is something Vognar would know, and well, most people know that these dwarven ruins are there, and that there are underways still under the sea, under the mountains in many areas. No one really knows where, or perhaps someone does.
Dot dot.
but most of them are have collapsed or broken, or you'll be unable to travel through most of them. It is known that Olai Kar, that one should be there should be draft through it, meaning that there is a passage through.
Okay. And these passageways at the height of the Dwarven Kingdoms extended all the way back to Anethkar?
Right.
Okay.
Well, through of course immediate, not all the way.
There wasn't
under
like a straight shot from Alucard.
No, that's it was along the land, along these outposts where one would get to the surface to eat and drink and maybe take a rest, look at the sun trading for the outlands, of course. There is known that, of course, it's sort of a myth that in the height of the Dwarven Empire, there were more dwarves living under the ground, sort of even under the seas, in underground cities, never seeing the light, than there were living above ground.
Wow.
But these haven't really been confirmed. It's more like that in Britain's old days they had a magician and such. It is fairy tales.
So about this guy named Merlin.
Exactly. It is pretty much thought to be fairy tales, but if a person is very knowledgeable, they may see that it may have some roots in reality.
It may have been possible.
Right. It would certainly have been a possibility. It would just have been. It is hard to see what they would have gained from it, for you, at least for your character's perspective.
Okay.
But it is known that these ways would have, if not, they would not just be like straight pathways. There would be cities and outposts carved out of the rock, of the foundations of the earth, on way. So, if one of these paths were found, it would most likely lead to way more interesting things than just the other side. And of course, Ola Ikar has some adventurers traveling through at times into this underway, searching for these treasures that undoubtedly are there.
But of course. I think that takes care of the queries I currently have regarding the situation and the surrounding area. I think it does.
All right. Do you have anything, Griff?
I don't have anything straight off that I can think of. Because, well, Durdle has never ever been to the Scar, so he wouldn't know anything of the area.
Right.
No, I think I'm good. I have to admit, I'm enjoying the lore of the world, and I'm enjoying the drama that is ensuing from my actions.
Soap opera, I mean, the last session you got into it with Dullboard, you gave him a chance at another saving throw. He rolled like a 5.
Yeah.
And here with Vognar as well. And Durdle's just a busy guy, huh?
Yeah. Now he's got to have something about Tenrishima. Talking to her about something. And, yeah.
Yeah, I could imagine that.
And then yeah.
Just out of character, where is Tenrishima's homeland?
She is from Chakathamor.
Okay.
Pretty much where Durdle served.
Right.
The human kingdom.
And
there.
Zakara, that was like the giant place, or what kingdom was that?
Shakara?
Yeah, Zakara.
That is mostly sort of this, not really that developed. There's never really been a huge kingdom of Sakarar. It is a very sort of silent place, not much happening. Really not that interesting. If there's one thing to be noted about it, it is that it's one of the most sort of racially diverse areas. It's never really held any real power. Doesn't have any special resources. The most it's been used for is sort of a trading hub between Chakathamor and Rune, because people don't want to go to Magador, which is a jungle almost, a place of tribal humans and goblins, almost living in the same way. And this is where Ushmog is from.
Right, his epic, story that I only know out of character of everyone being murdered.
Exactly.
And what about Rune? Any particularities about that other than Durdle having spent part of his apprenticeship there?
As your character knows, well, this rune is basically the current height of humanity. It is where it is basically a machine creating money and wealth for those who knows how to sort of handle it, while it churns everyone else into bone meal. It is very unforgiving. As in once, Rune was this sort of land of milk and honey, lots of natural resources, very good farmland, and good just rulers of republics, all city-states, no overall rulership. Of course, dwarves didn't like that. This was after the Dwarven Empire fell, by the way. Then years began turning dark, and starvation began plaguing the area, and this just got worse. There was years where crops wouldn't grow, and where just bad things continued to happen. No one really knows why, as much other of the world didn't seem to be plagued by this. The Dwarven kingdoms at this time were importing a lot of food, having not established agriculture in the Dwarven kingdoms. They'd been relying on food from the colonies, and as such, much of the food were drained there, while Rune was sort of left to starve. In Rune, this was, of course, taken advantage of by very few people who, weirdly enough, seem to know that something like this would happen. They have invested in ways to acquire food steadily, and, well, this had not been a big thing before, but now it certainly mattered a lot. Most of the sort of good people had been charitable the first years, and that had left them with nothing, starving to death, simply, while the more greedy, more desperate people began doing thievery, stealing, hiring themselves out as mercenaries and such. The only reason why the rune didn't completely despair was that the Eagle Knights were there. Before this sort of starvation period, they were a great Knight Order, possibly the best trained and most powerful military in the world, keeping Rune safe and keeping all the city-states from going into war with each other. They were a Knight Order established to make sure that war, poverty, and sort of harm to any living creatures were minimalized, as eagles and humans sort of aligned, helped each other to for the betterment of all people. This was a very hard time for them, and they're but a sort of a small shell of what the Order once were. However, people such as Geist, the current leader of Ceradorn, have profited greatly from this this hunger that is now over, by the way. But they now own almost all things in these city-states. And people are pretty much willing to do anything for a chance at money. Money is the ultimate goal. It is not in much of the world. Money is a tool. Here it is the goal. Just hoarding it and keeping it, because it is almost money is almost equal life. If you have money, you are allowed to survive. If not, well, basically you're owned by other people.
That's all stuff that my character has picked up, as in his travels and stuff. That's stuff that he would inherently know.
He would not know all of it, of course, but he would, of course, have heard the rumors. I mean, especially being a dwarf, he doesn't see this human land as anything. You know, it's basically wolves fighting over scraps of meat.
Right, the whole aspirations that they have. Okay, so Rune is the primary bastion of humanity. Is Chikarthamor just another human kingdom?
Chikarthamor is not a kingdom. There once were a king of Chikarthamor, but it is a long time ago, because no king has been able to step up. there's a lot of sort of nobles, rivals. Not really any war, as they're constant threats from the Scar. They have been working with halflings, fighting the threats of the Scar that have been invading their homelands. If not for these threats, they would probably have been a much more prominent, much more powerful nation that have been constantly ripped down. And the ambitions of course, almost all noble houses there would be to restore the kingdom, but no one really wants to admit to not being the king.
Okay. And Magador, was Vognar know anything about that island?
It is basically a savage place.
Okay.
You know,
Savage place.
there's not it's not really regarded as
Just like the
civilized.
rest of the world. Okay, I got it.
No, I mean Sakura, if Vognar went there, he'd probably find it boring, but yeah, it was in the same stale sort of myriad as the dwarven kingdoms.
Okay.
Nothing really happening. And the Un Islands were where elves live. No one really. I mean, in huge forests, elves are known to reside, but you don't see them, you don't encounter them, you don't talk to them, and you don't seek them out because it is known that elves are so foreign and so different that you know the stories goes around the civilized world that people who seek out elves always, it's sort of these humor stories, right? That a prince seeks out the elves to get help or something. It always ends tragically with him being murdered or banished or in some way for something completely ridiculous and mundane that nobody understands. I mean, this is sort of
Moral of the story: don't go looking for the elves.
exactly. These are weird people. They're not rational beings. However, if you leave them alone, they leave you alone. So that's what people do. And the Un Islands are one of the happiest. Almost were sort of a paradise island. Just small families living the life. You know, good crops, no real problems. No kings, no real leaders. A free land, no one threatening them.
Okay.
Nothing really to be gained by doing so. Being so near the stable dwarven kingdoms, and Rune having
So
quite a
much
bit to do.
stable.
So
So the Dwarven Kingdoms, okay, primarily, their focus is dwarfs, but from what I've picked up, they also have a huge population of both gnomes and halflings from back when they used to be used as slaves.
halflings, not so much.
Okay.
They were not really used much as slaves in the actual dwarven kingdoms. They come from the northern Scar, meaning they were agricultural people. They were some of the people out in the colonies that made the dwarven food. That were then sent home to the kingdoms, of course.
They were used to grow the food that the Dwarven Kingdoms
Exactly,
imported,
because
but they didn't
halflings,
live there.
when the dwarves found the halflings, these were a sort of a simple people living off the land by agriculture and by animal husbandry, not really having developed any weapons or mostly just culinary arts. And of course, the dwarves quickly realized that this was a good thing and just took in the halflings, not as brutal as slaves due to the halflings, more living side by side. Of course, dwarves still taking control. Halflings not really minding that much.
The gnomes, on the other hand,
The gnomes, on the other hand, came from the Outlands, meaning very close to the Dwarven Kingdom. So when the mines, when the need for ore for the further expansion of the kingdoms got so great that there were no time to mine it safely and slowly and sort of steadily, gnomes were brought in to do the hazardous work in the mines. Pretty much, if a gnome could get in, get some ore, and get out again, that's good. Take the ore from him and send him in again.
which is why it's fitting that the gnomes were part of a whole attempt to flood the mines.
Some gnomes that were unrelated
Some
to the
gnomes,
slavery, however.
Oh, okay.
They did it to let nature reclaim the land.
I remember that whole arc, yeah. I thought they'd also had connections to this enslavement.
No, the gnomes are a very split people. They love to argue, they love to jest, they love to sing and dance and do theater, and no, they seem to never really be serious about anything. willing to throw their lives in line for some weird idea or something that doesn't make sense to anyone else. Their cities are almost never visited by anyone but weird people, or sort of they're strangers of whatever civilization they come from. There's not really much trade, and it's known that they're doing all right for themselves, as gnomes just sort of appear. If you were in Rune, marching for an idea of using magic to improve agriculture, gnomes would almost appear out of nothing supporting your idea.
Right, I remember you mentioning before to me that gnomes were willing to throw themselves to any particular cause.
Right, there will always be some gnomes that agree with you and some gnomes who don't, and that's just how they are and how they're seen. Again, not much is really known about their homelands. They, however, working as slaves in these mines, they found, deep on the mountain, there was this gnomish hero, or heroine rather, who found a huge gold deposit in an otherwise thought sort of empty mine. And this was in an area, in a place that had been cleared by dwarves. This gold were not there when the dwarves were there. And she found it, and she was able to mine it in secret and earn enough money to buy the loyalty of both mercenaries and corrupt dwarves, enough to actually to get weapons to the gnomes and stage a slave rebellion, taking their freedom by force in the name of Gal Glittergold, the hero. They then traveled through the underway of Anith Char, destroying it while they did so, to back to the outlands of their ancestral homes.
They could not be so easily followed back.
Where it is known, they drove away the kobolds that had taken residence there. They drove them to the Scar, and they retook their ancient lands, and they've just simply been there since the dwarves were not in a state to follow them.
Right, especially with the underway being demolished. So, I guess my final query here, and this will be a sort of like a out of character player scope here entirely, is from what Durdle told Vognar and from what I've gathered, in terms of like getting support to fight whatever undead is coming, the actions they chose in the Dwarven Kingdom seriously gave them nothing.
Of course, it gave them the friendship of the
right, the friendship of the
socialist faction. However, it is known that both the imperial levy and mercenary groups, the emperor would have just helped by sending the people pretty much with weapons as levies. They are not available due to them being in rebellion and being free people without having any sort of ties to the emperor. They've sort of thrown that off them. And the very professional, ancient, and now after years of training and strengthening and equipment, very strong noble army. The ancient soldiers of nobility, the sons would be warriors, and that gathered in
they're kind of busy right now too with the whole Civil War
thing.
Right,
they had expected to be able to throw down the emperor as long as the people stood down. That's what had been quite easy for them, and they've been take over the kingdom and continue. They have been severely destroyed as the people now, instead of standing down, have actually risen up against them.
So in terms of like an actual concrete way to oppose whatever undead may be coming, and that whatever these party members were tasked with doing as they were heroes, in terms of the Dwarven Kingdoms, they don't have much to show for it concretely.
Right. They've made a huge change in the history of the Dwarven Kingdoms and the world, but as for a standing army, there's currently. It is currently unknown if there is any.
I'm just going to rejoin the call because for mine it's getting very awkward to hear you guys.
Right.
So just give me a second.
Okay.
Dwarven Kingdoms is currently in civil war when the players left.
Yeah, but I like how when you were telling me what the nobles would have rewarded Durdle with if he picked them.
I love that teasing thing. Like, yeah, the nobles would have given you so much, man.
Oh,
It was quite obvious that the nobles were the wealthiest choice. The emperor would have been by far the easiest. If you didn't want to bother with any of the politics, siding with him would have been the simplest way to do what you needed to do. While the socialist was sort of the interesting choice presented to you.
Of course, the party went after the interesting thing.
no, I was planning a lot more. I really was. Like, I was sitting.
Yeah, those extreme advanced plans of how to take over the whole kingdom.
I know, I remember hearing about that and all the
Emperor
goodwill
Durdle.
and ingratiation you tried to put in with the nobles and stuff, all the ass-kissing you did.
And I just got bored of it. I just got sick of having to deal with Dullboard. And I just went, fine. So
I think Dullboard was the main course for that. But it turned the story in an interesting direction. I was thinking about something. What was it, though?
Not a good sign.
Hmm?
Never mind, I'm just making a joke, that's all.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember what I was thinking about.
Was it about D&D, or was it like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
forgot
about-
to leave
no, it's
your
about-
pizza on
it's
top
about-
of the
no,
oven for 5 or 6
it's
hours?
It was about D&D. Like, what is this burning smell? Like burning wood. No. It was about D&D. Can't exactly remember.
And you're not actually the only one. Manaki has been, like, cutting in and out, like, the call quality's been shifting. I think it's Skype.
Right, okay.
It might be my sister. She has this MMO guild meeting thing
Oh,
going
okay.
right now, so I might be stealing some.
Of course. So I imagine you're salivating, Manaki. You got to deposit all of this knowledge, and you got to hear two characters interact in your world.
Yeah, I mean, I have so much lore for this world by now that you will never get to know. It's insane. But it's sort of what I do. Like, if I'm bored or taking a bus trip or whatever, my thoughts just go to the world, and the story sort of continues to unfold.
I like to think I told Griffin this, that he actually got to experience a bit of that himself whenever he said, there were other things, there was lore you could have learned about the Space Hulk, people you could have interacted with, and I threw back at him, so now you know how Manaki feels every time he allows you guys the opportunity to learn something, and you just walk past it.
For example, when they met Ned, the just like character, and they did in fact find, I believe, a journal, but left it there. Even after they had killed him without talking to him, really, learning anything about him, they did find a diary and some a little scribbling sketch of someone, and they weren't interested, so they left the whole thing. So now they may never know who he was, but I mean, that's a player choice. Of course, I can sort of say, well, maybe I should have made it a little more. I don't know how I could have made it more obvious or interesting, but you know. And of course, then Caven was introduced because that's a way easier way to sort of dump lore on the players, having an NPC there. Sorry, Griff, I interrupted you.
No, you didn't. That's fine.
I did interrupt you, but...
So, I guess, Griffin, do you have any questions about Vognar that I might be able to answer for you?
Well, actually, over the past few days, I'm doing this because Durdle, Durdle is kind of the de facto leader, so you're part of the group. So Durdle is actually trying to pick up on your personality to kind of best talk to you. Like, he knows how to talk to Dullboard. He can try to talk to Tenryjima. Like, he's able to pick up, don't talk about Tenryjima's name. You know, pretty much just by look or reaction. So things like, what kind of personality would Vognar be giving across as he just naturally is? Like, going from one spot to another, would he be a very, like, personal person, like, only involved with himself, or Would he be chatty or interacting with people, or would he be open about hot topics or things? Basically his interactions with people.
I like to think, other than the first session, which was where I was just swimming around at a bunch of ideas and trying to make them all work, that I played Vognar how he would end up being. He spent so much time away from his people, his dwarven homeland, just wandering around, visiting various, different places, interacting with so many other people over the past decades. I mean, it's longer than I've been alive, and I'm trying to fathom that aspect, that he's just, other mannerisms have just rubbed off on him, so he will end up, like, keeping his, emotions, and, like, close to his, chest, and, he rarely expresses himself, to such a serious way, but, on the same token, though, he is prone to a cynical humor, and even sarcastic stuff, which is, Dwarven humor is very dour, from everything that I know. I don't know particularly how that might have changed in Manaki's campaign world.
No, it's fine.
But Dwarven humor is very dour, and they're not prone to flashiness. The whole eccentricities that Durdle described with the Emperor was rather alarming. And so he ends up playing that way. The whole cynical thing of, like, whenever Vognar said to Asmuk, "Ha! I've killed people before, it's nothing new," stuff like that, he just shrugs it off with the whole, just exploring. I'm getting new experiences, I'm feeling new things. After what's been talked about today, though, as I mentioned, the light's going to go off a bit for Vognar. He's going to develop a far more grim attitude towards the situation, and that almost feeling as if when all the adventuring might be said and done, he always had the constancy of the Dwarven kingdoms to fall back on, like, look at the glories and the achievements of our race. Well, if his race is detonating right now, and he's really concerned about his family and how well they might be doing, not that he's tried to talk to them for so many years, but he always felt he was doing the right thing, and he didn't want to get wrapped up within that again. He just packed up one day and left, and only his sister knew of his true intentions. And so that is going to be something that hammers into his brain a lot more now. Like, how's his family? How's his sister? What are the state of the Dwarven kingdoms? What if there's an undead apocalypse coming and the Dwarven kingdoms can't stand up for themselves? Durdle was a fool, and that's another thing too. I mean, he doesn't agree with what Durdle did at all. I mean, he ultimately was diffused there, and he realizes with that whole sort of grim humor that he needs to save the world by hopefully destroying the axe before he can save his people. He is still rather angry at what happened, and he truly does believe that allowing the nobles to succeed would have been the best for everyone involved, and that in time the nobles would have curbed their over-enthusiasm, and the Dwarven kingdoms would have prospered again. And he just finds it hard to see, like, how that couldn't have been a use at all. So his personality is going to be a lot I guess you could say less friendly in that aspect. Where apparently he and Durdle had been like frickin' playmates.
But we'd anticipated that. But again, for the sake of, like, entertainment, drama always causes entertainment. It causes flexibility, and it adds a lot of interest to roleplay scenarios. So from an entertainment and a character development point of view, like, the drama I really approve of. From a personal point of view, I find it terrifying.
How so?
I've never been comfortable with drama in a personal situation. It's something I always try to struggle with. It's a lot of the times why you saw me sit there really quiet for a while and really carefully have to think. Again, we've all experienced drama to some varying degrees or another.
Right. I mean,
but it's ultimately, I try and keep on the perspective that I want players to play and have fun with each other.
Yeah.
But then, of course, drama is always going to occur. But this is me speaking out of character, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, drama between characters is good. Drama between players is bad. That's a distinction between player and character that is very, very important to make. When we get into this sort of thing. It's not actually you and Grimith sort of discussing, it's Durdle and Vognar doing this discussion. Sort of continuing the story of the game.
Yeah, there's your window of insight into Vognar's personality. Being a bit jovial and sarcastic with it. His lighthearted humor, just to like try to inject it. But now I'm going to see if I can enforce it. He's going to be a lot more toned down.
Especially
Yeah.
around Durdle, because it's a very conflict of personality.
Well, it's actually going to be with the entire party. He sees you all as responsible, while Durdle may have failed the Dwarven race. He didn't do it alone. Other people conspired to help screw over the Dwarven kingdoms. Not that he much likes, Dolbord to begin with.
Oh, fair makes it interesting.
Yeah, I mean it also makes it interesting that I guess to you, I don't know if you've considered that the rebels may not win,
No,
but
very,
no
very.
you do not know how this is actually going to end.
No, I kind of anticipated that they might have lost.
But I
You're
don't
not
want
that.
to stress that.
You're not that.
It's like, well, this is
you don't give
awkward.
me straight answer.
The last time I was here, everyone was in a perfectly equivalent civil war. What the hell happened, socialists? Well, as it turns out, the 99% couldn't beat the 1%. Are you fucking kidding me?
Well, it's a case of it's peasants going up against super well-trained military forces. So I mean,
Right.
you can't see it. There is a potential that they lose.
It is
But,
worth
you know-
that at least. I'm not going to tell you because Durdle is certainly not familiar or in any way knowledgeable of who may win. He saw what was going on in the capital city, and he heard that something similar was going on in the whole kingdom. But that is
Why
the extent
Vognar
of
was
his
so
knowledge.
accusatory. You threw away what remained of Dwarven strength, and you blew up the entire race just for some idea, which might not even work. Which doesn't sound like it's gonna work.
No, it really doesn't. But that's the character Durdle. He's changed quite dramatically as a character and as a person.
I sense actually in this discussion that Durdle he's more good, leaning towards good than he is towards neutral in this
Yeah.
whole thing about the belief in the individual and that the good of many people is more important than sort of tradition.
That's a nice discovery to have. It helps us, push him up after all of the questionable things he's done in his life.
Right. I mean, he's the neutral guy who really didn't care about anything but money, but he's beginning to develop into a character who actually cares about a lot of things.
Which
See,
just dramatically affecting him. He's partly a lot of the reasons why, I'm guessing he stays up quite late at night just sitting thinking in his own thoughts. Because, the past few months have really grappled him. He's never had people that have been dependent upon him, and he's never, had such stressful situations placed upon him. The most stressful situation that he'd ever been in prior to that was bartering for a good deal on some, trade goods and stuff.
Right.
So, the entire situation is really having an impact, and it's really starting to stress him out. But he understands that being a leader, you need to have a strong personality. That you can't just crack under a very small thing. You need to maintain a very sound constitution, a sound attitude and personality that doesn't break and whimper. But he also knows when to stand down, to not let pride take over.
right. So he is growing with the responsibility.
Yes. But he's finding it very difficult. So that, he's spending a lot of time just sort of sitting and just, he's carving things, but not in a way to make something more tradable, just in a way to help his mind process all of this stuff that's going on.
Right. Carving things with his mace.
Right.
Oh, his dagger.
Didn't receive his mace.
Yeah.
He has a dagger.
Yeah.
Tiny little thing, though.
That's right. And don't forget, we got to pick up all the tiny little halberds and the tiny leather armors before we leave the rest.
No,
Woohoo.
no, definitely do that.
Yeah.
Never underestimate the power of loot.
That's right. Just like I have a sack full of those things. We need to go find
did
some
that-
halflings, goddammit. Let's go to the Northern Scar.
It's like, where did you
Those
get
are
all these
weapons to
halfling
the
clothes?
farmers.
Here, join in the Civil War. Don't tell Vognar.
You know, I'd actually tempted just to keep a collection of all of this and just store it on the ship and just become a weapons dealer for all the races.
Sailors, get your leather armor, get your halberd, get your
Get
tiny
your small
daggers.
leather armors. Yeah, well, that could be the end for Durdle, just stressing out, going and just being a merchant until the world
Right.
ends.
Providing we all survive whatever might be happening.
But actually, Durdle's drifting more and more away from money, which is very strange for him. It's one of the things that he's actually struggling with, and leaning more towards the benefits of people. Like, he sees that you can actually get more done with people than you can with money.
I think the very fact of your argument
money.
that we showed off in our conversation today with Vognar and Durdle, when Vognar brought it to a crux, the whole, what did you side with the socialists for?
What did you gain?
And Durdle was like, we did it for the people. We did it for the people.
Which is sort of like just blowing his mind. It's like, what? The thing is,
Yeah.
this isn't just like a confusing one for him. He's not comfortable with this decision. This is something that's really tearing him up as well. Like, why did he do that?
Right. Right. And I think that's an interesting way to go. Have you thought about, now that we're all gathered here, have you thought about what advancement you want to take for him? Level-wise. It's a multi-class paladin, or...